You'll see the monkey face. Monkey face forward.
Yeah.
Let's go through some slides. Wow, love that enthusiasm. All right. Okay, so for next week's lab quiz, you want to be able to name the organ and then work your way down. So if I have this slide on your quiz, which I will, what is that? That's a testis or a testes. So want to start with that level. How did you know? It says so here. Seminiferous tubules, these are where sperm are made. Look in the center of each tube, you'll see guys with tails. So I make sperm in my testes. So that's the testis, so the seminiferous tubules that we learned in lecture. Alright? So seminiferous tubules in my testes. Okay? That's your clue. Let's try a different one.
Is there seminiferous tubules?
There are two things here. Which one is the testis?
The bottom.
This one.
On the right.
Yeah, these are actually, it's hard to see, but these are the little sperm in the tubes. These are not those. So that's the epididymis. It looks slightly different. But this is the seminiferous tubules. This right here is a wrapper of white on top of your testis. That would be the tunica albuginea, the white part of a testis. So if you touch a testis, that's what you're touching, is the tunica albuginea. White, literally white layer. That's the outside of the whole. Okay, try this one. What is this a picture of? A seminiferous tubule in my testis. How did you know? Sperm in the middle of a ring. That's what we learned in class was the, the blood testis barrier kind of thing. So that's my seminiferous tubule in a testis. So you want to identify that that's a testis and that's one of the tubes inside of it. Makes sense? So look for the sperm. It's always a perfect circle, or pretty darn close to the perfect circle. Okay. Right, so now we have to name some cells within the seminiferous tubule. All right, we'll do the easy one first. There are cells which are not part of the ring. So these are rings. Those aren't. Interstitial cells, also called Leydig cells. So if you have a cell that's not in a ring, you're going to call it an interstitial or a Leydig. They're synonymous. Then we have the one in the ring. So let's see. They're going to make sperm. How would we say sperm-making cell? Spermatogenic. Spermatosperm, genesis, creation of. So spermatogenic cells are the cells making the sperm. So these cells here are my interstitial or Leydigs. They're not the circle. These are spermatogenic. They are the circle. I am the circle. Be the circle. Right? Okay, but now you'll notice right here, I have two cells that look kind of oddball. They're not the round cell everyone else is. They're kind of long and pointy. They don't make sperm. They nurse or help or feed. What would we call them?
Sertoli cells.
Sertoli cells or nurse cells or sustentacular cells. So if you're the round cell in the round ring, you're spermatogenic. If you're not a round cell in the ring, you're a nurse cell.
Are they usually that close together?
They can be anywhere. That one happens to be close together. Let me show you another close-up of some of these. Let's do of a seminiferous tubule. So, oh look, round cell, not round cell. Round cell is? That's organic. This one is the other one. Nurse or Sertoli, yes.
So the Sertoli is connected to the barrier?
Yes. They basically do some of the filtration between here and there.
Okay.
And they also do it immunological privilege.
The ones like inhibin, right?
Yeah. Okay, on the seminiferous tubules and all that.
Which one makes inhibin?
Well, inhibin actually is made by the nurse cells, officially, based on the amount of spermatogenesis. Okay, the tail parts. I will get you to a lot. I can get you a whole testis to get you a lot.
Oh, thanks.
Let me get you a lot. Hold on.
No, I think this is cheap.
Just a second, get you a lot. Takeoff does not have a lobby. I have to find you one somewhere else. So let's try right about here. Alright, so this is a big view of a testis. This. You'll notice that the little seminiferous tubules are serving these little rooms, little cavities, little lobes. How would you say each little group? Those are lobules. If you notice, there's a little white line between the lobules. What do you think we call the white line? Is that on your list? It's not. You took it off your list. You never know something. Alright. Those are lobules, the sections in the testis. So each of these is a lobule.
Can you see the tunica vaginalis?
I'll be off screen. I can see the albuginea, which is this one.
And
I can't see the vaginalis, which is off the screen.
So it's really that far away?
Yes, it's way out yonder.
the red.
We'll get there. That's actually easier to see on a model. I'll show you one on the model. So okay, our testis. Look over the circle. I'll be on the model. I'll show you that one. It's easier to see on a model. Retae is the net they form. So let's find some other parts we're supposed to know. So we'll do it in order. What comes after a seminiferous tubule?
Epididymis.
An epididymis sperm school. Here's a slide a lot of happy will probably mistaken for testis, but it's not. Okay, so I want you to look at this with your mental eye. Okay? Look at those circles. Got a picture in your head? I'm going to go back and show you a testis. And I want you to see the difference in the circles. What difference did you see?
These ones are actually circular, those ones had.
So one difference, yes, these tend to be more circular. There's also multiple layers as you go from outside to the lumen, right? So if you look back on the epididymis, they're not always round. Some are, like this big weird thing. And notice there's fewer layers. There's only one or two cells before you hit the lumen. The lumens are bigger, right? So there's some differences in how they look in terms of the circles. So you have to visualize that's not a testis, that's an epididymis. It's a sperm school. The sperm are actually living in here. They're not being produced there.
Is that why we don't see the sperm, or is it the other one?
They're in there, it's just harder to see because they're not as crammed together. But that's an epididymis. Right?
Stereocele?
So, yes, we have to zoom in on the epididymis a little bit. We're going to zoom in on one epididymati. Here's a close-up of one of the rings in an epididymis. So, trick is, much smaller number of cells for a much bigger lumen. These are the sperm all learning to swim. Right? So you're going to focus on this edge here. Hey, hairs. What tissue had hairs? PCC. This is pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Those are called microvilli or stereocilia. Sounds like your ear, right? But that's basically hair-like cells on the outside with the sperm on the inside. That's to kind of kick them around and keep them moving. Right?
So those are the stigmocylinders on top of the PCC?
Yes. Then if you notice, there's a little thin red band right here. That's involuntary muscle. So what muscle would that have to be? Smooth muscle. So you can squeeze them and sort of kick them along. And they mill around in this line. Alright, so that's not a standard tubule because it's too thin, has way too much lumen, the sperm are all in the middle, and you have little hairs here in smooth muscle. That would tell me it's an epididymis, yes?
What function do the stereozoa have?
Basically, they keep forcing the sperm further and further up the epididymis. So normally they wouldn't be moving on their own, so you just kind of kick them down and around. So just keep them moving, keep them circulating. Otherwise, just punch it up like that. There's an epididymis. So it looks like a standard tubule, but it's not.
So is the smooth muscle like between the layers of PCC?
Yeah, so it's right, it's basically on the basal lamina of the, looks like the basal lamina.
Oh.
What comes after it? The epididymis. Vas deferens. Here's a typical vas deferens. How would I know that's not a testis?
Because it's huge.
It's huge. Huge what? What is all this?
Muscle.
Muscle. Why would you need muscle at vas deferens?
So you can squish your spermies.
So you can squish your spermies out. Don't be like a true biology student. So you can squirt away. Right? So lots of smooth muscle. The lumen's this little, usually a star shape in the center, not always. It's usually a small star and lots of muscle. Because you're going to squeeze the sperm and shove them around. Right? Ejaculatory control. Right? So a really muscular tube. Very muscular tube.
Someone's talking about the hairs in the
Is that one? Yes, indeed. Has usually a square in the center, not always. Lots of muscles. There's a close-up of the center, but again, it just has a star-shaped center. This deferens or vas deferens. So you're looking for a muscular tube. Okay? Then you're going to come around, and you're going to hit some of the glands. The first gland is your seminal vesicle. So here's your seminal vesicle. Egads. How would I know that when I see it?
Because it doesn't look like anything else.
Looks like a sponge. Right. Rorschach's test. What do you see here? Right. I see a car. Right. All right. So seminal vesicles look like sponges, and on the models they look like a weird-looking spongy thing. So here's the sponges of the seminal vesicles. So what do you think you call these folds of snot? Mucosal folds. What do you think you call this red involuntary muscle running down the middle? Smooth muscle. Yes.
What's the stuff that makes it look kind of like glassy or glossed over, like?
Oh, here?
Yeah.
I think that's just how they cut it. I think they missed part of the fold there.
Oh.
I think that's just light to the
So
bottom.
where are the folds again?
Folds are all the sponge part.
So
The white, the red around the white part.
Oh.
The white part would be where the fluid is.
Oh,
The red would be the mucosal folds. So you're looking for a weird-looking sponge. Rorschach test. So weird spongy stuff.
So wait, I'm sorry. I wrote the mucosal folds are
The red.
the red. Okay, and the smooth muscle.
That red there. Right. Look at the nucleus. Okay, so come around. We're gonna go through a bunch of other stuff. We're gonna end up in the where? Subhistory for Venus. All right. Unfortunately, Jane has a penis. It's your own down, right? You do a better penis.
Oh my god.
This is a very mean clown. He's on his side, right? He's mean. So you gotta tip your heads, right? This way. The two eyes and the mouth, right? And that's a typical penis slide. So two eyes, and then here's the mouth. So he's on his side. It's like this. Yes. Okay. Right? So let's go through penis parts. So let's do the big parts first. The two eyeballs are which ones? Cavernosa, Capora cavernosa. They're the tall caverns, usually on top. The mouth of the clown is the spongiosum because it has the urethra in the center of the sponge. Spongy urethra you learned 3 weeks ago. All right, so my urethra is in my spongiosum. Right? Okay, so the trick is, what do you call these little holes in the spongy stuff? What are those? What's in there? Venous cavities. That's where blood fills. So the venous cavities are what you would call the spongy-looking material.
You said all around, it's not like.
Yep.
Okay.
In general, venous cavities. Okay? So then you're going to look in the eyeball of the clown, and this one doesn't show it very well. That does show it at all. But there'd be 2 big arteries in there. And what would you call those arteries if they're on the picture?
Deep
arteries. It doesn't show them on this picture. Well, I think it clipped one here, but didn't finish it. I'll have to find one somewhere else. The cavities are the spongy tissue. There'd be 2 arteries if they're in it.
So there's one in each, or
There's one in each. There's actually more than one in each, but you can see one in each.
You see the tunic.
Tunica albuginea. Tunica albuginea is the outside of each of the rectal tissue. So it's this little line right here that surrounds the spongy tissue. So each spongy tissue has a white line, you can barely see it, around each one. So they're encapsulated in a tunica. I'll try to find you a better picture. Albuginea. That's indeed. Yeah, that's cool. So here's a close-up showing some penis parts, and this would be the tunica albuginea, this kind of layer of tissue right here, surrounding the rectal tissues.
So what's that thicker part behind it then?
Thicker part behind it, where?
Well, when you pointed to there, I thought you were pointing to like
Right here?
here. So then what's this?
That's kind of a transition. I would say that's probably part of it, but formally that's the tunica. Right here. So here's a deep artery right there. Right here. But that's what penis up close.
Can you say from where to where is that albuginea?
I would say it's between here and here.
Oh.
It goes
outer layer of the testes?
outer layer of the rectal tissues,
Oh.
and the outer layer of the testes, and the outer layer of the ovary. They're all the same name. They're all white.
The venous cavities, are those the white areas
Yeah.
or the tissue?
The white layer, the white spots. Yeah, the cavities are spaces. So these are basically veins
Okay.
that fill with blood. We're actually got blood through there. So let's go through rapidly and name some parts. What are we going to do first? Yes. Okay. Name it and claim it. That is a what? Don't say penis because you're wrong. Epididymis. Yay! How'd you know? Big lumen, small number of cells. I see hairs. I see lots of sperm. So it's a ring, but it's not like the testis ring. So epididymis. Right? Big circle. Not on the ground. Name and claim it. Semivesicle. How'd you know? Sponge. Mucosal folds. There's some smooth muscle over here. Looks like a weird looking sponge. Where's it? Very good. Too easy, girls are. Yeah? Let's try. Name it and claim it. You sure?
Yes.
I am, right? So big full circles, usually they're not always perfectly round. I see the interstitial cells that are not the circle. I can make up the sperm in the center. You kind of get the gist. If I stare long enough, I probably can. Off the top of my head, I can't visually see one Sertoli cell. Should be one in here somewhere. I just don't see one off the top of my head screaming at me. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I don't know. I have bifocals on. I have no idea what that is. Yeah.
So then, will you always find them at the end?
They're at the edge, yes. My screen makes it easier, right? Yeah, I don't see anything on top of it. Let's see. What else do we have to do? Oh, yeah. This is a close-up. See if you can figure out what's a close-up of.
Ductus deferens.
Ductus deferens or vas deferens. I see lots of muscles. I can see that kind of star shape appearing over here. That sure isn't a testis or anything else. So that's the ductus deferens or vas deferens. Okay, girl slides. Now the fun begins. Let's do girls. So we have to know what's first. Oh, yes. Uterus. This uterus. Okay. Name this organ. That's a uterus. How would I know that's a uterus?
It's weird.
It looks strange. We can go with that. You notice that there has a top side and a bottom side. It has a layer like your skin does. So your uterus obviously has a layer to it. It also has all these what we call the worms, but they're actually glands. So the uterus has glands in the layers. And it has a top and a bottom. That sure doesn't look like a ring, right? So the only thing obviously that could be of the stuff we're doing is a uterus. So it's going to have this layered effect with worms, or glands we call them, right, to be formal. So I'm going to show some other pictures of uterus. And almost always I'll have on the top edge and the bottom side. The glands can vary by size based on the menstrual cycle. We'll talk about those a little bit next week. But this is the top. This is not the top. Right. So what do you call the top of your uterus? The part that does the work.
Functional layer.
Okay, the functional layer is the endometrium. So all that is endometrium. That's the innermost or superficial layer of the. So the baby lives up at the top. So this is endo within the uterus, but that's the functional where the baby's going to be.
Wait, so did you say the functional is the myometrium?
So let me show you. I'll get it over here. This is a better view because it shows all the way down. So baby lives here. So from here to about here, that's all the part touching the baby. That's the endometrium. That's the inside of your uterus. Okay?
So the functional layer then is.
So the functional layer is the part that sloughs off, which is about here up. This part stays behind, and therefore that part would be which layer?
Basal.
The basal, like your skin, basalate upwards. So there's no line in the sand. You have to just eyeball that this part looks different from this part.
So when you say sloughs off, you mean like with menstrual cycles?
Yes. So you lose this when you menstruate. You keep that, and that makes more of this.
So where the basal layer?
The basal layer would be about here to here.
It's like a bit darker.
Darker, they get closer together, you lose some of the spacing. It's very subtle, but you can sort of discern it. There's a color difference on my screen. We'll see a little bit of color difference.
Oh, okay.
Let me show you another picture of it. Sorry. This one kind of shows it. So as you go down, I'm getting darker, closer together. So functional layer definitely here, basal layer about yay. Right, it's just the bottom of the endometrium. Yes.
What's the really thick, skinny layer at the top?
That's actually the epithelium of the uterus itself. Right, versus all the connective tissues and things.
On that?
Hmm?
Do we need to know tissue type on that?
I don't think so. Is that?
No.
Nope, you just have to know the basalis, functionalis, and there's one level you have to know. The myometrium. Grady, let's find a myometrium. So myo means what? Muscle. That's not the endometrium. That's down here where the muscle, where your cramps are. Over here, these are smooth muscles off the screen. So the endometrium is the part touching baby and menstruating. Myometrium is the muscle. So in the models, you see the myometrium and the endometrium clearly on the models between the two.
Would it be like after the basal layer?
Yes, it's deep to the basal layer. So it's under the endometrium. So if you see something layered like that, you're going to say uterus.
Yep, serosa.
So let's keep going. After my uterus are my uterine tubes, fallopian tubes.
What's the road side of the uterus?
What? This is serosa. On mine?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me find the page.
23 in the middle.
23 in the middle. Where?
Right up there by the Adrian.
Oh, that'd be on the very, very outside, yes. You can't see it on the slides, it's on the very, very cirrhosis of your stomach, right?
Can we just cross it out? There's plenty we need to know.
Not yet.
Come on, Joel Silverman.
Let's do our uterine tubes. I'll come back to you. Alright, so here is your fallopian tube slash oviduct slash uterine tube slash pick your word.
That looks so cool.
That does look cool. We call it the snowflake.
Oh.
Right? It looks like a snowflake. That's the farmer talk. Okay. But guess what? Half you will put vas deferens because you'll get misled because there's muscle here. But the inside doesn't look quite the same and the muscles aren't as thick. So you're going to look at the difference of the size of the muscle and the lumen. But that's your uterine tube or your fallopian tube or pick your word you like.
So people confuse it with the vas.
Yes, because they'll look at the muscle and see it's a tube with a star and they'll go vas deferens. Or they'll go seminal vesicle because I see a bunch of sponge. Right? I've seen it all. No one puts penis though, which is amazing, right? But let's go through it. So you're supposed to know folded mucosa. Can anyone find the folded mucosa snowflake? That's a snowflake, right? Okay, smooth muscle would be all this stuff out here, right? We expect to squeeze. You zoom in on the snowflake. What do you think you'd see? Cilia. That's how the eggs move around. Is you zoom in on one here. Ooh, I don't have a close up, do I? I don't have a close up. You have to trust me, there's cilia in there. I think you can kind of vaguely make them out. But there's cilia that move your eggs along.
So it's like the dark, like,
Yes.
oh, okay.
That's the outer edge of the snowflake.
To move eggs along.
So hint, this is not a vas deferens. Alright. Last one of early parts. Vagina. How did I know vagina was doing? Glad you asked. Stratified squamous, it looks like an esophagus, it looks like everything else you've ever seen, right? But stratified squamous, non-keratinized. The trick with the vaginas is they form this kind of wavy, those are the rugae, the little folds, they form this ruginous, they call it. And they have these little funny looking, like, fingers popping up. Right, but you have to know stratified squamous, vagina. Okay. And then you're good to go. So let's randomly go through some of these and test your skill. Let's do. So, hey, this will bother you because you're not used to seeing this cut. I only showed you this part. That's the uterus all the way around, right? But you can see there's a hollow lumen, there's the endometrium, the myometrium, the serosa will be out here, right? And if you look at your endometrium, you have the functional layer and the basal layer, because you can see the color change between the two layers there.
So this is your uterus just chilling in there?
Yep.
There's no babies.
There's no baby in there yet.
Are those fallopian tubes or ligament? Maybe.
These would be the fallopian tubes here and here, I think. Yeah, it might be.
Huh?
What other two tubes go?
Let me get you more. This is more what you're used to seeing. This is more what I'll show you. Right. So we have uterus, we have endometrium to about yay-ish, right, in myometrium, and then you look at, well, I have a difference sort of in functional layer be from about here to about here. These represent the basal layer because they're changing density and color. Okay. There's no clear line in the sand between a basal and a functional. Just kind of about here kind of logic.
How does it change halfway through those all the way? Looks like the all.
These? Or up here?
Yeah, right there.
Nope. Nope. They're actually out here. Those are in the functional layer. Yeah. So it's just the way it is. You're going to say uterus. What's the other one? What should I do next? Oh. 2. This is the snowflake. And these are all the muscles. It just looks odd where they cut it. But these are the muscles ringing around. That's the snowflake. So it's a uterine tube, ovarian tube, origin line. Name this one.
Vagina.
Vagina. Sorry, twice. Let's try one more. Here's a close-up of an organ. Which organ is this a close-up of? It's a fallopian tube against snowflake, and again, to prove I'm not lying, there are cilia on these if you look carefully. They're on there, so I'm not lying. Makes sense? So your first job is figure out which organ you're in, and then remember what things are inside of it. Snowflake versus star versus sperm. Whatever.
Wait, what is this again?
Fallopian tube, oviduct,
Oh.
uterine tube.
Do you need to move signs?
Boob slides. How can I forget boobs? What's wrong with me? Yes, let's look at it in this context.
Oh, we're supposed to know the slide.
You are supposed to slide. Okay, so if this were the slide you got next week, the only answer you're going to give is mammary gland, because that's the only thing that would look kind of like this. This is not a snowflake. This isn't a sponge. It's not a ring.
Yeah,
This is
like
sponge. Well, but not spongy like the seminal vesicle sponge.
Can you show us that? and
Sure.
listen to this?
So notice these are complete rings, but they're weird looking versus. I have to go back to the male.
The complete sponge rings.
The vesicle looks like that.
Yeah. This is a more smooth slide.
Okay, so you have to go back to. Remember your salivary gland from 3 weeks ago? That's basically what you're looking at. You're seeing simple cuboidal and rings all over the place. So this is a mammary gland at rest, so inactive. It just looks like rings of square tissue kind of randomly all over the place. There's no sperm in them, there's no layering to them. So this would be considered inactive or resting, just sitting there. If you're lactating, what do you think happens to them? They grow, right? So if we look at, as you get closer and closer to birth, the rings begin to expand. They start to gain size. They're growing with milk. And then if you were actually lactating, they would look like this. They get really huge. And can anyone guess what this white stuff inside is? That's milk. So you're actually forming milk. So the cells, the little circles just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you expand what they call the alveoli. That's what's happening when you're lactating. So inactive and active, the gland's the same, it's just the size that changes. Having an active mammary gland. All these little white specks are the milk droplets you're forming.
Can you show us an inactive one?
I can.
So they're just different in size.
Yep. So here's more resting.
Oh, okay. They're not.
So you did lactate, now you're done.
So now they're back
They're just kind of normal, smaller sizes. There's more of them.
Do we have lactating and non-lactating slides here?
I do not know. I never looked. Let me look.
Yeah, we do. Well,
Which one is it?
different memory gland slides.
Yes, you have an inactive and active. Yes, you're both.
So like lactic for size, lactic for stuff, so like do you have any questions? So what do we put in on the slide? Anything?
Mammary gland.
That's it.
Inactive.
Just say what it is.
That's mammary gland. Doing good? Questions? Thoughts? Concerns? Yes.
Could you walk me through this blue by the testing?
Okay, test this.
Yeah.
Alright. Repeat it. So if this were a testis, which it is, This layer is the tunica. Which one's on the outside of a testis? Albuginea. So the outermost layer of a testis would be the albuginea. The seminiferous tubules, this is a baby, so these look different. They're the tubes inside. These are the lobules you see here. The vaginalis would be outside of all that in the epididymis. You can't see that on this slide. Rete is this right here, or rete. It's where all the plumbing comes together before you leave, which we'll do on the model. Can we do some model parts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do some model parts. Let's do this one. Boys or girls first?
Boys.
Okay, over it. All right, so let's pretend you're taking a quiz in 3. Oh, you are? How about that? So I'm going to start here, which is my testis. My epididymis is on the back of this model. It's going to come up and around. Let's go around like that. So let's start with my testis. Number 3 is the testis. Notice that there's little white lines that break it up. What were the white lines breaking it up? How that will break? What are those?
The septum for the lobules?
The lobules. The lobules are the rooms inside the testis. If you look between the number 3 and the number 4, there's like a V here. Looks like a hilus in every other one. That's the rete. That's where the testis is plumbing into the epididymis. So the rete is that little kidney bean of the testis. Because they don't call it a hilus. They call it a rete, because they do. So if this were a lung, you'd say hilus. If it's not, it's a testis, you say rete. It's a net, not a hilus. I'm not the drunk Roman who named you, right? You gotta, let me just understand that. Right. So we have some muscles you're supposed to know. There's a muscle that hangs down from your inguinal canal and makes a sling over the testes and would pull them up when you get cold. That muscle is the cremaster muscle. Then there's a muscle which is a dashed red line you can't really see. Online you can't. There's a dashed red line actually superficial that in the skin that makes it all wrinkly. That is the dartos. Dartos is the wrinkler, which is in the skin. Cremaster is the sling that pulls them up.
What's the purpose of the dartos?
It's to put the scrotum tighter on the testes to keep them warm. So if you get cold, you wrinkle and you pull. If you get hot, you unwrinkle and unpull. Cremaster has been cut here, but it would hang out all this red you see here.
And then the master.
That was the cremaster.
Oh.
The dartos is the one in the scrotum itself. The dashed red line, yes.
So since it's a muscle, does it provide blood flow and heat?
Yes, so you can shiver it with your cremaster, believe it or not. Yes. Normally you just use the position. Wordless trivia. If you rub against thigh, his cremaster reflexively pulls up on that side, so you can make the testes change position at the party. Yeah, cremaster reflex. So I know one invites me to a party, right? Let me show you my cremaster. Right. So we have the epididymis. Let's do epididymis.
Yes.
Now the party you say yourself. Okay, so A was the testis, B is the epididymis. If I touch the white part of the testis, I'm touching the what? Albuginea. If you look on this model, there's a little structure, a membrane, after the testis under the scrotum, where the dartos would be, right between there. That's the vaginalis, because that goes all the way up to here. The vaginalis would be superficial to the albuginea. You'll see it in between the tunica albuginea and the scrotum. You'll see it right in there, a little membrane. Right, so if you're looking for the vaginalis, you look there.
So it's just deep to the albuginea.
It's superficial to the albuginea, on top of it. So I got my epididymis, spermatic cord is the whole tube. I'm going to come up and around right there in my vas deferens. Then I'm going to come around the back side, right there. 67, 61, that's all my urinary stop. We're looking at 15. That's the vas deferens. And if you notice, it gets really big right here.
Ampulla.
That's the ampulla. My favorite thing to stickers on these big giant models. Table number 4. Number 4 is the ampulla. That's on every quiz I ever give. That's the bigger part as it goes into the seminal vesicle.
Why is it bigger?
Because it just is.
Okay.
I didn't told you, so I'm not sure why it needs to be bigger than number 4.
Bigger part than the seminal vesicle.
4 is where it gets bigger before the seminal vesicle, which is number E. The letter E. That's the seminal vesicle. That's the sponge.
Right above the prostate.
Right above the prostate. Prostate's F.
So the ampulla is where that stuffing starts to get.
Yes. Before the seminal vesicle or on the seminal vesicle. So we spin this guy around like this. Notice number 20. 20 is a tube from my seminal vesicle through my prostate. What is tube 20 called? The ejaculatory duct. So tube 20 is the ejaculatory duct from the seminal vesicle into the urethra through the prostate. That little tube, there's one on each side. That's number 20. Then you're in the prostate, which is F. You're now in the urethra. Bulbar urethra is 21. And you're heading out the spongy urethra out the penis.
So what the ejaculatory duct, is that part of the, is that going from the seminal vesicle into the
Urethra.
urethra?
So it kind of cuts through the prostate. So on the other models, it looks slightly different. I'll show you another view here.
And it's different than the prostatic urethra.
Yes, prostatic urethra is the urethra in the prostate, not the. So look at number 12. Number 12 is the ejaculatory duct. It's a tube coming from the seminal vesicles through the prostate. This is the prostatic urethra coming from the bladder down. And they meet right there. They're separate tubes.
Is the sperm coming through that? I'm assuming coming through the ejaculatory
Yes.
duct. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just where it joins in with the pee.
Yes.
It goes through the prosthetic urethra.
Yes. Goes into the
And
prostate.
then the prostate secretes the fluid
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
And then they start.
Then you go down, bulbourethral. Okay, we got some penis words on here we have to know. Okay, this part was pointing number 10, the part by the bulbourethral gland. That's called your penis what?
Bulb.
Bulb, like a bulb in the ground. That's the bottom part, the penis. The part you can't touch, from here to here, that's the root, just like a root of a plant under the ground. The part you can touch is the
Shaft.
shaft, which makes some sense. So shaft, root, bulb. All right? Now 6A and 6. So what's the difference between 6 and 6A?
6A is the uncircumcised.
Uncircumcised, we call the part the what? Foreskin or prepuce is another way to say it. So this one's been uncircumcised, so he has a foreskin or prepuce. 6 is the glands. This is the head underneath the foreskin. So on some models they've been circumcised, all you have is the glands. Some have a foreskin. I've nailed many students on those because you don't look well enough to notice. Right? So there's 2 things on the end you gotta know. Depending which one I live in. So I'm mean, I'm angry, I'm bitter. So let's do our rectal tissues, number 7 versus number 8. What's 7? The upper one. Cavernosa, and 8 would be spongiosa. So again, the upper ones are the cavernous ones.
Crust? What's the crust?
The cruise you can't see, penis makes a tripod. The bulb is one, there's 2 arms, legs, literally, that go sideways. So you can see it on a picture, but not a lot of shoulders. So just show how big this up much. Okay. So 25 would be spongy, corpus spongiosum. 24 is the cavernosa. This one's been circumcised, so 30 is just the glands. And the bulb would be here, root, shaft. Make sense?
The cruise, we're not able to see.
Cruise you can't see, it goes laterally. Let's do some girl parts real fast. Okay, try number 9. What's number 9? So override. Override, okay. So therefore, what's number 9? What's number 10? Well, 11 is the fallopian tube. 11 is the tube that's going to carry the egg around to my uterus. 10 is gluing my ovary to my uterus. That's a ligament. What ligament would glue my ovaries on? The ovarian ligament. So that's on page 23. Right? So ovarian ligament holds your ovary to your uterus. So if you find your ovary, you're also looking at the ovarian ligament. Right? But 11 is the fallopian tube. That's one that carries the eggs from my ovary to my uterus, which is number 6. All right, so they're right next to each other, but they're different.
Wait, can you point to that again?
Which one?
The fallopian tube?
Fallopian tube's 11. Ovarian ligament's number 10. Yes?
11B, the fimbriae.
Fimbriae are the fingers at the end, right? Isthmus is 11A at the corner. Yeah. Those are fingers, fimbriae. So many students confuse 10 and 11. So on the model, see if it's going between the ovary and uterus, that's the ligament, or around the ovary and around, that's the fallopian tube. But they're right next to each other on the model, so be cautious of those two.
Wait, can you say that again?
Fallopian tube goes around.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right, that's it.
That's it. What about the infundibulum of the uterus?
Infundibulum, that's basically the stalk. That's this part, basically. I've never asked infundibulum.
And fimbriae?
The fingers, 11B. Let's keep going. So what's number 6 and 5? Let's do 6.
Uterus.
Uterus. Very good. What's 5?
Cervix.
Cervix. That's the neck of the uterus. So number 4.
Birth canal.
No.
Fornices or fornix. These are little V's. Your cervix makes a cup that sticks down, and that's the ring around the cervix. So this one's in the front, so anterior. This one's in the back, so posterior. The laterals will be on the side. You have to flip somebody around to see them. But these are the fornices. Fornices. What's number 3? Birth canal, vagina. Those all work, right? Then we have 2 and 1. What's 2 and 1? Labia majora is number 2, labia majora is number 1. So what's 17? Clitoris on this model, right? That's the front. That's a front. Bladder, pooper's over here. Okay. Right. So let's do a different model. Just the body model. Be this one here. Right. So this is the same kind of parts. So we have uterus, cervix with the fornices, vagina, minora, majora. That's supposed to be the clitoris there. What's 76? What's that fat pad on the front? Mons pubis, or mons veneris. Right. So now we're going to zoom in on some of the ligaments and the plumbing of the uterus. Right.
So you said the majora is on the outside?
Majora is the big one on the outside. The lateral 2 and larger down. So let's do back this one. Okay, so number 10 again was a ovarian ligament. Number 12 is a ligament going from my uterus forward to my pubic bone. It's round. The round ligament. Pregnant women complain about the round ligaments getting stretched. That's what they mean. The round ligament goes to the front of the uterus.
So uterus to pubic bone?
Uterus to pubic bone runs anteriorly. If you look behind number 5, not where it's pointing, but right here, there's a ligament going from my uterus back to my tailbone.
Suspense really.
Uterosacral.
Uterosacral, from uterus to sacrum. That's going backwards. So ovarian goes to the side, round goes to the front, uterosacral goes to the back. So you got 2, 2, and 2. 2 exits, 2 exits, 2 exits. No smoking allowed on the butt.
So where did the suspensory
Suspensory ligaments are not on the model. They'd go up from your ovary up to your ribs. They'd be up here. So they suspend you.
Wait, they go from the ovary to the ribs?
Uh-huh. Or ribs to ovary.
Not uterus, ribs. I had
No, they go from ovary.
So that's not on any model?
Floaters. They don't actually go to the rib. They go to the fascia by your kidney, which is by your floaters.
Oh, okay.
There's rib gland, right? So now we got the yellow one, number 13. What's all the yellow going to be? Broad ligaments. It's wide. Right? So that's the hammock the uterus sits in. So if I change the picture, just to make you hate me more. What should I do next? We're going to do ligaments on this one. So number 55 is a ligament going forward from my uterus to my pubic bone, or past my pubic bone. That's the round ligament. All right. Then, you can't see it, but there's a ligament that goes around your rectum to your sacrum. Uterosacral, because it's going to go round, V around. Right. Then all this yellow you see here, here, and here would be which one? The broad ligaments, the one the uterus lives in. Right? So then we go back, and we're going to make this worse. The broad ligament's broken down into 3 parts, because why have one? You have a part by your fallopian tube, you have a part on the ovary, and a part on the uterus. And each one is named something different. So, let's do the easy one. The one on your fallopian tube is mesoalpinx. Because you know your medical terminology, salpingo means fallopian tube, right? The mesoalpinx is on your fallopian tube. What do you think you call the one by your uterus proper? Mesometrium, because endometrium, myometrium, mesometrium. They all have metria, the name for uterus. What do you call the one that's wrapped around the ovary? Mesovarian. So the 3 broads are all meso something. Alpinx, ovarian, and metrium.
So where does the broad ligament like lead up? Like does it attach to anything else?
Yeah, basically your whole pelvic floor. It glues itself on the pelvic floor, basically.
Can you point more specifically? It's kind of hard to distinction between them.
Which one? Alpinx is here, between the fallopian tube and the ovary. Ovarian is actually on the ovary itself. And broad is from the ovary to the uterus. So where 13 is actually pointing. Well, it kind of comes in the side.
Okay.
Right? It's like a hammock.
So the mesoalpinx was between the fallopian tube and the ovary?
Yes.
And the meso-ovarian?
On the ovary itself. And then the mesometrium is on the uterus. Those are the definitions of the broads.
Is that ligament, is it just kind of long suspended, or does it attach to something else?
Which one?
That ligament, the hammock,
The bottom of the pelvic floor.
ligament.
Pelvic floor. So doing okay? So let's do one more. Almost forgot a few things on here. I'm gonna do that. So let's go back to here. You have the mammary glands. All right, let's do the easy one. Number 3. 3 is the nipple. Okay. Number 1. Let's see. Number 1 is the colored thing around the nipple, the bullseye. That's the areola. Now we have problems. Okay, these things are the mammary glands, but they don't call them that. Right? The big chunks where each part is, that's a lobe. Right? So here I see 1, 2, I see 3 lobes in this mammary gland. Here, mammary gland slide picture. If you notice, each lobe has regions in it. So here, here, here. What do you call regions of a lobe? Lobules. Each round dot, that's a gland, but we don't call them that. What are they called? They look like air sacs. Alveoli. So each circle is an alveolus, living in a lobule in a lobe.
What circle? Can you play the circle?
The little bumps. Right? So each bump is an alveolus. Inside a lobule, inside. So to show you what that means much. This one. Here's a different model. Each of the purple bumpy thingies. What are those going to be? Alveoli. Each little chunk they're in, that's a lobule. This whole thing would be a lobe. Like a lobe of a lung. So you break it down, lobe to lobule to alveoli. Right? So when you're feeling in there, those are lobes you're probably feeling. Right? But then, wait, there's more. Because there's these tubes that lead out of the lobules and begin to head to the nipple. What do you call those tubes, you think? Lactiferous ducts. You can't say milk duct and no one will pay you. You gotta say lactiferous duct, although it is a milk duct, you don't say that. Then the hard part is right here at your nipple, there are little bumps. You don't have an udder, because you're not an ungulate. You have these little white things right there. That's as close to an udder you get. What are those? Lactiferous sinuses. That's your udder. So those are the sinuses of the little bumps just ahead of the nipple coming down from the ducts. Yes?
Does anything come out of the sinuses?
That's where the milk's stored. You can store extra milk in your sinuses and up the duct. Right.
So little ducts, sinus things.
Yeah, so if I were milk, I'd come out my alveoli, go down my ducts to my sinuses, the next stop is the nipple. That'd be the pathway. So then what holds all this on? If you look up in here, on this model, they show these white, sort of long, fibrous things right here. What do you think you call those? Suspensory ligaments. That's what sags when you don't wear your bra. Make sense? So that's the concept of the boots, basically. So lobes, lobules, alveoli, suspensory ligaments. No. Lactiferous ducts, lactiferous sinuses. Make sense? Cool. There's one other thing I can show you. Oh, this is an house. There's a magic poster you're going to take a picture of. There's two magic posters you're going to take a picture of. Anyone seen the reproductive poster? Took it away. Where's my girl poster? Oh, down that. I must put it the wrong way. There's a magic poster you need to take a picture of. Ah, reproduction. Ah! What? What am I doing with your computer?
We do that for my computer.
No. Your computer, you Hey, you want to find this poster and take a picture of it with your phone because it has the external genitalia, the view we all know, right here. So if this has appeared on quizzes, if you can label it from that view. So take a picture of this poster, especially for that. We also have an equivalent male poster, which you probably want to take a picture of at some point. And then we have one showing the tissues I just showed you. Find it. Yes. This one shows, that's actually next week. There's a boy one in here somewhere. Ah. This is your histology of a male on a slide. So you want to take a picture of this poster. It shows the testis, seminal vesicles, all of that on one picture. So between these three posters, you know everything that I could possibly ask on some of this stuff. Make sense? As opposed to all this stuff. Make sense? All right, I'm done talking. Now it's up to you.